ideally, this is a pricing mechanism wherein early bird prices are low, people who book in between get a reasonable price, and the ones who book in the end would also get a reasonably high price. Again, there would be some vacant seats towards the end of a flight, right? Those would go very low in cost. So this would come under prescriptive analytics. How does a grocery chain decide who should be targeted for a specific campaign? And should I send it to everybody? So would you see from, say, for example, if you're looking at, say, Flipkart, does Flipkart send a campaign message to every customer? So if Flipkart is running thousands of campaigns in a day, every customer won't receive those 1,000 campaigns, because if that happens, he will lose the customer and it would lead to a lot of marketing costs. So target your customers, that comes under predictive analytics. And then we have the descriptive, which is done most of the time wherein it's about understanding your customer, your data, and that is where the descriptive analytics plays an important picture. Do we have any questions at this point in time? You all can address those questions through the chat window. Okay, and if there's no question, I'll just move ahead as of now. So these are a few of the trends which are shown for 2016. So everything is integrated. So you have smart gadgets, you have your phone. Whenever you come, say, for example, you buy a new phone, the moment you buy a new phone, mostly it's Android based. So you start configuring your phone. That's the first step. The first thing it will ask you, do you have a Google account or a Microsoft account or something of that sort? You say yes. It starts configuring it. It imports all your contacts, whatever is available on the cloud. Everything is integrated. You download an app. You want to use Ola. Before you download the app, you have to give a permission that yes, I'm giving you access right to track my location. I'm giving you access to my SMSs. I'm giving you access to this and that and all those things. You're basically giving access to all those things, right? And there's a lot of data which is collected to this. You get personal with your mobile, right? So a lot of things like WhatsApp and all those things are generating a massive amount of data. This is the trend and it's going to increase. You have disruption in the retail market. So previously, if retail was done in a brick and mortar style, wherein a customer has to go to the store, today it is happening online, right? There's a change. So organizations today prefer the customers to buy online rather than make them come to the store. So if it is about virtual reality, if I'm using artificial neural net machines and all those things, I'm talking about virtual reality. Can I do image reconstruction using some algorithm? Yes, that is the next thing which is going to come. We have wearable devices with smart watches and all those things which tracks everything, right, from your heartbeat, number of steps you have taken, the calories you have burned and all those things, which essentially is to generate a lot of data which would help us to improve our lives, make things easier for us. But those are the disruptions in technology which is going to happen. Now we'll come to careers in analytics. So there are some figures which are kept on your screens, right? So for the domestic market, for the overall analytical market, the job openings and all those things. So as you can see, there's a lot of scope. In fact, when we talk on common forums, when we have discussion with HRs, we have discussion with people from other companies which are in the same domain, we are facing a challenge of getting the right kind of resource. Okay? So eventually we are searching for a 2-year experienced candidate and we don't get a candidate. We scan through 10, 20, 500 profiles and we don't get the expected profile. Okay? So this is the scenario right now. 3 years back, the openings used to be at a very senior level. So a lot of people used to say that we don't have openings for freshers. That was reality at that point in time. Because when a practice starts, so it's basically something which came from the West. So when it started, ideally many of the companies started hiring people who stand at vice president analytics, because that is where a practice has to start. And later on, as we move ahead, when it comes to implementation, it is the bottom of the pyramid wherein we see a lot of freshers also being hired now. So right now the industry is asking for a lot of freshers also, and that's happening in the domestic market also. So the scope for this domain is very huge. You can obviously see the salary which is shown. I guess these are median salaries. But But I wouldn't say that, say, a 0 to 2 years experience candidate will get a 4.5 lakh salary only. It might be starting from 2.5 lakhs also. It can have a high point of 6.5 lakhs also. It depends upon the candidate's profile also. So these are very broad figures to give you a view, and this has come from NASSCOM. So this has been a survey which was made, and based on these figures have come out. So talking from a domain perspective, so you have a core business which runs on analytics. So there are many consulting companies wherein analytics is provided as a service. There are companies which provide analytics as a product also. There are companies which consume analytics for self. So pharma, insurance, banking, oil and gas, telecom would be primary domains wherein it is consumed for self. They do take consulting from other companies also. So you can see a bifurcation of the same over here. That's how it is growing. Incidentally, I see that in India, the banking domain shows just 11%, but you have a tremendous scope for this, and a lot of analytics is happening in the banking domain, right? From fraud analytics to risk modeling and all those things. Now you will see that there are some fields in analytics. MIS reporting has been happening for a very long time. There's non-predictive analytics, which basically talks about segmentation, profiling of customers, a little bit of forecasting, which has been done from a long time. There is a target audience, which is shown over here, which basically talks about what is your educational background, B, telecom, BTech, MBAs, and all those guys. The primary question over here is who can do it. It doesn't mean that a person who is doing an MBA won't be in MIS, or a person who is BCom cannot do predictive analytics. He can do, right? But he has to put more efforts. There are certain things which he would be having, and there are certain things he might not be having. So we do see certain questions flowing. Let me address those questions. So there is a question from Nandakishore wherein it says that Infosys head says that self-service analytics would be not far away and easy and similar to Tableau or Spotfire. So Rajshri has a question. Don't you think analytics is less applied as compared to fundamental and technical analysis in case of stock market analysis? Yeah, Rajshri, you are very correct. Analytics is something which is less applied in the Indian market, right? But if you go in US, right, so there is a specific field called as quants, which basically uses a lot of notions of random distribution and their application, right? So in India it's less, but yes, we expect it to grow in the next coming decade. Rajshri says that she has interest in the fields of accounts and finance, and I'm a BCom graduate in CA final. Want to make a career in finance domain, pursue certification courses in financial domain from NSE and European institution. How analytics is going to add value to my career? Okay, Rajshri, the question is, can we think of the next decade without analytics? So irrespective of whether you are from a finance domain, you are from a marketing domain, you are from the pharma background, or you are from any other domain, the next set of hiring would be with the question that do you have analytics in you? Say, for example, if I'm talking to a sales guy, if I'm trying to hire a sales guy also, I would say that, okay, how are you going to do the sales planning? Are you going to do your sales planning in an Excel sheet by just doing a trend chart, or are you going to use some forecasting technique, right? So analytics comes into picture, right? So if you're talking to somebody in the banking domain, so I'll say from my consulting experience, many banks today don't use fraud analytics in the way in which it should be used. They're basically using rules. It is swiped in Mumbai. In the next 2 minutes, if it is swiped immediately in Bangalore, the physical one is treated as a fraud. But apart from this, also there are a lot of other frauds. How do we trace that? That is going to happen with analytics. So yes, obviously, there is a lot of scope for analytics in every domain. It would be an inherent part of every business aspect. Anamika has a question, how much experience in analytics domain generally one requires to become a data scientist? Anamika, data scientist is a very broad term, right? So somebody who has 2 years experience also might say that I'm an aspiring data scientist. I see this most often with a lot of students from SPJN and Great Lakes Institutes, wherein once they enroll for a program, they say that I'm an aspiring data scientist. So after 6 months, the program is over, they feel they are data scientists. No, it's not so. So if I'm looking at a sea, right? If you swim on the surface, you are a swimmer. If you deep dive inside, that is where we would say that you are a deep sea diver, and that would take some time. And also, it's also about in 1 year how much of knowledge you are gathering. So there could be a person who has spent 10 years and still he has not got the knowledge which a 2 year experienced guy might get. So Sachin Tendulkar does not become a Sachin Tendulkar because he spends 20 years on the field, right? It's because he started it on day one. So even a fresher, he is doing it with the right approach, might be called a data scientist in the next 2 years if he's putting everything in the correct perspective. I have one question which is coming from Nishant, which says, what are the job opportunity for a chemical engineering working in Reliance in data analytics since I'm opting for a change? Okay, Nishant, since you're working in Reliance, and specifically if you're talking about data analytics in that field, uh, uh, in Reliance itself, you have a petchem business, right? Wherein Reliance's job is to say there is something which is called as buying decision, wherein you have to get a lot of crude from some other markets, say Mediterranean market or maybe from say Latin America. So there is crude which is called as sweet crude, Brent crude, and all those things depending upon the composition, the amount of sulfur it has, and all those things. So what crude should I buy? What price should I buy? What should I generate out of that crude? In fact, the Reliance Jamnagar plant is one of the best examples wherein you can dump any kind of crude. It has prescriptive analytics embedded wherein based on whatever configuration you provide, it does a long assay and a short assay test and gives you that, okay, this is the possibility, you configure it and you get the composition which is priced very high in the retail market but might be priced very low when it comes to sourcing in the international market. That's how we make profits. Right? So actually analytics has a good scope in the petchem business. Let me take the next question. Okay. Okay. So Sapan says, can you give me some more examples on prescriptive analytics for better understanding? Okay, yeah. Sapan, say for example, let's see prescriptive analytics is done more often in manufacturing. It's more often done when a lot of sensor data is collected. Say for example, I'm a company which is doing manufacturing of an ecosystem for a food processing company, right? So say the food processing companies has 90% automation. What you do is you have a lot of data like temperature noted down through a sensor at different points. Mechanical parts fail after some time. Can I do something wherein before a product fails, or before something like say a spring, which is very important, fails, can I do this looking at sensor data? That would be called as prescriptive analytics. Can I talk about something like, can I foresee that an aircraft part is malfunctioning and make sure that I take control of that thing and replace it with something? So out of the 3 engines which I have, say for example, or the 4 engines which I have, I just require 1 engine always to fly. But I have 4 engines in an aircraft. So we do a lot of testing for those engines. But would I leave it on an engineer only? No, I would use prescriptive analytics to give me a flag that yes, this component is failing and this engine might give me a trouble after the next 1000 miles. That would be prescriptive analytics. Can I foresee that the angle of rotation when I'm looking at the maneuveration, is it going in the correct point or do I see there is an error? Can the system auto-correct? If you talk about something like autopilot is something which is called as prescriptive analytics application, because the human eye cannot see changes which is happening very close to it, right, which a system can take. Yeah. Next question. Ambrish has a question. He talks about ClickQ in comparison to analytics. ClickQ is basically a reporting tool, a dashboarding tool, right? You can say it is analysis, it's slice and dice of data, representation of data, but it's not analytics. Analytics needs to have a computational framework and needs to have a lot of statistics with some model building, which is not there in ClickView. There is one more question which says, how different is application usage of analytics from ERP SAP where in big data has been used? ERP, say for example, is something wherein an enterprise is using it for managing a lot of things like SAP, HR module, SAP finance module. For your knowledge, SAP has one more module which is called as SAP HANA, which is basically columnar access of data, which lets you handle a lot of big data. And you have something which is called a SAP HANA PAL library, which lets you do a lot of analytics. An adaptation of R in SAP. Okay. So SAP has data warehousing, SAS has reporting, and now SAP has analytics also. But the tool is different. You have to buy the license for that. So Harish has a question. He is from a technical background, being in computer science. How would analytics add value to my career? Harish, there are two sides of the same coin. Say, for example, a guy who's a statistician, he has a good scope to become a data scientist, and a guy who is an engineer who also has a good scope to become a data scientist. Typically, an engineer looks at the same thing from a different perspective. So when I'm talking to a statistician, he is looking at data from a distribution perspective. But when I'm talking to an engineer, he is looking at the same data from a multi-dimensional vector space. And that is where we talk about machine learning, artificial intelligence. Right? So there is a lot of scope for you if you are an engineer. Probably you would be looking at tools like Python, tools like R, and adaptation of all these tools to create machine learning algorithms. So there's Harshavardhan who says he has 10 years of airline analytics experience. Right? What are the opportunities I can look forward to? Harshavardhan, I presume when you say analytics, it is so. I have had a lot of students who were from the analytics domain in airline industry, but most of them were into reporting, MIS, projecting numbers, kind of, okay, what could be the footfalls in the retail store, and many of them were outside the domain of sensor data. So if you are dealing with a lot of sensor data or you are working with a consulting firm which is handling this kind of data, there is a lot of scope. Okay? But the only thing is that it's a B2B thing wherein analytics might be consumed more by the industry itself. It might not be something wherein this data would be shared to a consulting firm. So obviously there's a lot of scope. If you're already inside the company which is having this data, you have a lot of scope. In the meanwhile, I'll just move the slide a little bit ahead because we have other things also to do. I'll address the question as they keep on coming. Okay, so we have this slide which talks about a lot of companies which are into analytics. Working with a lot of companies which are into analytics, I don't think this is the whole population of companies which are doing analytics. This is just the few who are predominantly into analytics. Okay? And this list will keep on growing. Okay, we'll come to something like what is the difference between SAS, R, and Python. SAS basically is a proprietary tool which makes it easy for you to do a lot of analytics, predictive as well as prescriptive. It's an expensive tool. R is an open source tool, so it makes it easy for you to have access to the software and to do it yourself. And Python is something which is the most favored tool for natural language processing, data mining on unstructured data. So from a proprietary perspective, SAS is the tool which is used in the industry, but we have seen a trend wherein it is changing, wherein Python and R are probably displacing SAS in most of the places. So R is one of the tools which has been used massively by most of the data scientists, and these estimates are from some surveys which were taken some time back, and these estimates are growing up and up. Similarly, you have Python, which is a programming language which also is used for analytics. I'll come back to the questions briefly, and then Joy would be taking over. So Norul has a question which says that do freshers get recruited by companies at Chennai as a data analyst? It depends upon, so there are lots of college freshers who are hired by companies as interns, and then based on their performance they are absorbed in the main payroll. So freshers do get recruited, and as I said in the beginning, right now it's the phase for freshers to get recruited. There was a time when only company used to hire for the senior vice president or something like that. Then there was the middle backbone, and now it is the fresher level. So there's a question which says, what does R stand for? R basically, it doesn't have any significance as such. This is how it was started in the initial phases in a University of Auckland in New Zealand, wherein it basically started as an open source project, something similar to what Hadoop started in Apache Open Source Foundation. Okay, I'll be handing it over to Joy. I see we have answered most of the questions which could be answered in this 30 minutes. And I guess we started late also. So let Joy complete his part. Yeah, Joy, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mohan, for that session. And thank you everyone for your questions. Hopefully most of them were answered. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to the next session. So we're just going to upload one more poll for you, which you can quickly take up. And then we move to the next session, which would be by Mr. Joy. So I'm just going to upload the next poll real quick. So if you could see, which industry have you worked in earlier? You have 5 options. You need to pick one out of those. We just give it another 15 seconds as only 30% have voted so far. Okay, 70%. We just need another 13 more. Okay, so as you could see, the results are up there. It's 38% for IT, 21% for banking and financial services, 6% for manufacturing, 3% for healthcare, and 32% for others. So let's just move on quickly to the next session. So I'd just like to introduce our new speaker. So we have Mr. Joy Parekh. He is the AVP of the online department here at Imarticus. And he will be conducting the next session wherein he will be speaking about the online offerings at Imarticus. So I would like to hand over to Mr. Joy.
Thanks for that, Prerna. And once again, I would like to thank Mohan as well as Prerna for getting through for the first 45 minutes of this session. Very broadly, I think this slide that you see on your screen right now gives you an indication on the online offering which we have at Imarticus Learning. As most of you, or at least a few of you, would also be exposed to what we are doing right now. So if there are any questions as we move along, I'll also be happy to go take on questions alongside like the rest of this discussion. To get started, I would like to quickly tell you all that in the analytics landscape, we take care of 3 different platforms. So we start with R. We also have a course on SAS as well as on Python. Apart from this, we've also moved into the data visualization landscape, where we teach you the basics of visualizing and reporting data using the Tableau tool. So as we move ahead, I'll just quickly, first take you through a few of the common points that we have, and a few of the USPs that we have here at Imarticus Learning. And if any of you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them as I move along. So the first point which you see on your screen is with respect to the duration. So all our programs that we run are all done online to begin with. You don't need to come to any of our centers. We have centers across the country now. We are present in Mumbai, Bangalore, in Chennai, in Delhi, in Pune, and we also will be now launching another few centers shortly. Apart from these, so to do any of the online programs, you don't need to go to any of our centers. You can do it at the convenience of your house or your office. And every program runs over a 2 month duration, that is 8 weeks. The second point, we look at the frequency. So as I told you, it's a weekend program which runs over every 8 weeks, and the content is shared on the LMS and virtual classrooms. The other thing I can do is let me use an arrow to give you an indication of what I'm talking about. So right now we are on the frequency point. The content is shared on the LMS, and the virtual classrooms are held every single weekend. We do these on the Saturday evenings, anytime between 4 to 6, depending on the program, and on Sunday mornings, which start at 10 o'clock in the morning. After this, I'll go to another point, which is very unique to Imarticus, which is the point on mentorship. Now, as you know, there is an online class that we run, which is every weekend. We have our instructors who are extremely senior in their own way, who are academicians who come in and actually conduct this class for you. However, at the same time, we also believe that your learning is not restricted only to the academic side. Right? It's also extremely important for you to get an insight on what actually happens out there in the industry. So although all our content is extremely case study driven, it is extremely experiential in itself. However, we create an extremely clear demarcation between an academician, who is your teacher, and an industry professional, in this case, who is your mentor. So what the mentor does is he gives you insights on understanding how things really work in the industry. So these are very, very senior professionals in the analytics landscape with anywhere between 12 to 15 years of work experience. We go align every single student at Imarticus Learning with their mentors. So mentor essentially gives you, in addition to what you are learning in your classroom, you also get to know more about how things really work in the industry. So I'll give you another example about the mentorship as we move along. Maybe if there are any questions along this line, I'll be happy to also take them. Just a minute. So Krishna has a question for us. He says, for some reason, if we miss the virtual classroom session, can we have any backup classes? Yes, Krishna. So each and every class that we do, that is the Saturday and the Sunday class, which I spoke to you about earlier, those also get recorded. So for whatever reason, if you are unable to make a class, we completely understand that, and you then have the option to review the entire class at any point of time on any device, maybe your phone, your tablet, or your laptop. So each and every class that is undertaken over the weekends is also recorded and also stored in the exact same LMS which you anyways use. So under the same login and the password which you would use for your content, for the quizzes, for the assessments, the case studies, as well as your learning material, in the same timeline is where you'll also find the recordings of your weekend classes. So, well, I hope that answers your question, Krishna. I'd like to move ahead in terms of the USPs of the offering. Apart from this, we have another offering on the career assistance. I think it is very, very clear that most of us would undertake these programs to either upskill ourselves in our existing domains and our existing jobs, or to at the same time maybe just move to different industries or to different functions within the same industry or company. So it's extremely important that we have some career assistance services which will further augment your experience with us over here at Imarticus. So what we do over here is we assist you in building your resume. Your resume is essentially like your report card, right? When it comes to how your experience has been with Imarticus, with respect to everything that you have done so far. So in the resume building activity, what we do is we help to look at your resume very objectively. We also give you feedback on things that could be different. We also give you feedback on things. We are also very critical in our own way. So we make sure that we only don't give you things that you want to hear, but we also actually help you, construct this in a better fashion. Apart from this, we also conduct the mock interviews, and we give you the leads and references of organizations. These are just public reference leads that we give you of hiring organizations in the analytics landscape. And as you can expect, like these programs are targeted towards freshers who are looking to start their careers, as well as to experienced professionals who want to move their careers in the field of analytics. All these online programs are sold at 24,000 rupees, and this includes every surcharge, every fee, taxes, absolutely everything. This is your all-inclusive price. So as we move along, we can give you more details for all the programs, but these are like the core offerings to each and every program that we have. I have a question coming in from Harish, who says that, can you explain how is it different doing a course at Imarticus as compared to the other institutions? I think this slide pretty much encompasses that in itself, right? So things like the mentorship program, things like these just career assistance, which is not only restricted to like the resume building, but we move on and give you mock interviews as well. Again, these mock interviews are extremely important. If you just look at it very objectively, when do you ever get like the feedback on interviews that you do, right? If you do an interview, you either get the job or you don't. In either case, you don't really get to hear back on feedback as to how well did you do in that interview. If you don't get the job, that pretty much ends your interaction with the organization there. And if you do get the job, then essentially you just move on getting the job, and then you just get on to the job itself. So very rarely do candidates and do people actually get feedback to say these are things which you did well at the interview and these are things that you did not do well. So again, the whole objective here is to conduct these mock interviews and then to give you very objective pros and cons, which we felt at the time of doing these interviews, which would help you go further strengthen your plus points and address your weaknesses. So I think these are 2-3 very big elements that are very different at the Imarticus offering as opposed to anybody else out there in the market today. So I hope that answers your question as well, Harish Kumar. Okay, so I think I'll just move on to the next slide, which is just a minute. Right. So these are the 4 courses which you see on your screen. Let's give it a minute. I think the screens are just loading. Yeah, I think you should have it on by now. So we have an online certification program that we do in R, in SAS, in Python, and in data visualization. Over there we use the Tableau tool. So I'll just quickly go through these. I think like the description across each of them also, they are quite self-explanatory. But if you have any questions around these programs, or even with respect to any of the online programs that we have, we'll be happy to take your questions along the way. Yes. So, okay. We have another question coming in, which speaks about like the mentor and like the teacher difference. I think let me go stress a little more on like the mentorship element also. So when we look at the whole mentorship concept, let me give you an example very quickly. So if you're in your class or in your school, right, or in your college in this case, if you have any questions regarding the curriculum or you want to know more about how a certain thing is to be done, you would always go back to your teacher, right, who is an instructor or in this case a faculty member. So if I use words like an instructor or faculty, or even in this case a teacher, right, are basically these are words which you associate with a person who's imparting the education to you or like the knowledge transfer element to you, right? But however, if you're looking at it, from a job perspective, or if you're looking at it from an upskilling or this career angle, I think it is extremely important to also get another viewpoint, which is of the person who's working in the industry or the person who's actually, doing this in a little more practical angle. So the whole concept of this mentorship is to create a demarcation between who is a teacher and who is an industry expert. So we get you in touch with both of these individuals, and accordingly then you can take it forward in terms of if you have any questions on internships or if you have any questions on which functions or which verticals work better. Okay. Do we have any other questions on the online programs or anything around the online offering as a whole? Okay, I have one from Pankaj who says, are placement opportunities provided for students by Imarticus, not just the references as mentioned before? Sure. So, yeah, Pankaj, in terms of these placement opportunities, we give you and we help to basically go curate like these leads and like these references which are available in the public domain. So, we look at Naukri, we look at LinkedIn, we look at Monster, we look at a lot of different avenues where, job search portals which actually have these offerings up there. We help to go curate them for you, depending on your location and your preferences, and then we go publish these out for you. So what we do is we basically go handhold you through the whole process of, where you can hopefully get an interview with them, and then you can take forward that relationship which you have, just along with the organization. The other question I have is from Harshvardhan, who is asking whether we have any mentors in the airline or the aviation domain. So yeah, Harshvardhan, at Imarticus, we have a lot of tie-ups when it comes to empanel trainers as well as mentors in this case. So yes, there are times when we are happy to make exceptions, and if you are already from the aviation industry, and if you would like to connect with somebody in the airline or the aviation domain, or like earlier we have taken some questions for candidates in the healthcare space, the real estate space, etc. We can always try to go accommodate that well in selecting your mentor as well. So I think those were questions that we had right now from Krishna, from Harish, Pankaj, and from Harsh. Do you have any other questions coming in regarding these programs? I think we'll give it another 5 minutes. We have another quick poll that we would like you all to do. I'm going to in the chat window, I'm going to send you all an email ID, that is elearning@imarticus.com. So I believe you all should have received this in the same question box itself. If you all have any questions, or if you or then apart from this, if you get some more ideas that you would like to share with us later, please feel free to drop us an email, and we'll be happy to get back to you. We generally have a tendency to get back in a couple of hours itself. So I think that should be good. We have another question coming in. A couple of them, in fact. When you say the course fee, does it cover all the 4 certifications mentioned in the slide? This is by Krishna. So Krishna, no, this is all individual. So these are the 4 different programs that we have, which is the CIRP program, CISP, CIP, and CIDV. And each of them are like 2 months each, and each of them will cost you rupees 24,000, which is the all-inclusive price. But however, if you do 2 or more programs, we also offer a 10% discount. Or if you have any other friends or any other colleagues that you would like to bring in along with you, then you both stand to gain 10% discount on the offer price. Krishna says, okay. I have a question which is coming from Nural. Where she's asking, so after completing these programs, at what positions do we get recruited by companies? Now, I also have Mohan with me alongside, so I'll allow Mohan to answer this question for you, Nural.
Hi, Nural. Now, if you are a fresher who doesn't have any domain expertise, right, and you are looking at getting recruited in an analytics position, so mostly when you join, right, you would be given a data analyst position. Obviously, you need to be very careful as to what the job description says, because many times a data analyst is a confused terminology used by some in the industry just for extraction of data, right? So it would be a fresher role wherein you might be tagged a data analyst, or you might be called as a business analyst, also a misused term, but that's how it is done. Right?
Thanks, Mohan. Yeah. Do we have any other questions coming in?
There is a question from Harish. It says, can we get a job by doing any one certification? When you talk about all these tools, at the end of it, you're going to do analytics using one of these tools only. Say, for example, if you're working in a bank, like say, for example, HDFC was essentially using, say, SAS for marketing analytics and risk modeling. Now, HDFC then thought, like from cost perspective, that it makes sense for us to move to something else, which is an open source thing. So they were having two things: either we would go for R or we go for Python. Incidentally, they decided to go for Python because of certain hardware limitations, right? And they went for that. Now, if you are a person who is doing analytics, you should be knowing about one of the tools very strongly, essentially either R or Python, and the other things you can adapt basis the requirement. Right? So if you know, say, Python, you can manage with SAS or you can manage with R also. If you know R, you can manage with SAS and you can manage with Python also. Essentially, the statistics remains the same, the mathematics behind that remains the same. It's only a tool difference. Right? So you will have to basically just adjust yourself a little bit. But if your one tool is good, that is reasonable enough, you will have to get some exposure to other tools also. So when we do our programs also, say if you do a program in Python or in R, it doesn't mean that we don't expose you to the other things. Off and on we talk, the faculty talks about the other tools also which is happening in the market, so that in an interview, you have answers related to them. That's how it is done. But yes, if you're good in one tool, that is essentially enough. Frankly speaking, if you say, it would be like if you're going for a war, you cannot have one tool. You need to have a gun, you need to have a big rocket, you need to have everything. But you need to know when to use what. That's how I would position it. There is one more question which comes from Sarika, which says that, is data management same as a data analyst? No, Sarika, data management is a different profile, or you can say it's a process, you can say, or you can say it's a task. A data analyst is a profile. A data management is something you do on the data. Right? So if a person is in MIS, he is also doing data management. A person who is tagged as a data analyst also might be doing the same thing. So the job profiles might be very different. End of the day, you might be doing the same role. But essentially, a data analyst means he is not a data scientist, his experience is less, but he's almost doing the job similar to a data scientist. There is one more question from Pankaj which says, there are all programming language. So is the basic of these programming taught, or the syllabus of data analyst, regression, machine learning, algos, exploratory data analysis, R, SAS, Python taught? Say when you talk about, say, one of the programs, say essentially the full form for that would be like, if I browse to that, say certification in SAS, right, or certification in R programming, right, you would be doing regression, machine learning, exploratory data analysis using R specifically, right? As to this part of the question, whether the basics of these programming languages are taught, yes, the basics are taught. When a student come in, we expect, if he is good in one thing, we ask him to stress on the other thing. So when you're doing analytics, it is not just programming, it is not just business problems, it is not just statistics, or it is not just algos, it is a combination of all these things, right? So when you're strong on one of the aspects, you can concentrate on the other aspects also. But when we train, we basically say that, okay, we start with the holistic approach with the assumption that you don't know anything. So the basics are taken care of. So even if you don't have a programming background, you should be able to cope up. But yes, it's a two-way affair. The faculty gives his effort, you also have to give an effort. That's how it is.
So then, just to add on to what Mohan said right now, Pankaj, in addition to just the tool, right? So of course, there's R, SAS, etc. They have their own syntaxes for doing the same thing. So if you need to go import some data from a SQL table, we also give you and also go train you through those elements of that tool. But having said that, we also teach you like the technique very well. So when you speak about, say regression, or like the different models that you will learn as you move along, we not only teach you the tool, but we also teach you the technique. So you, in a way, at the end of the course, you get to know, how do you go run those techniques, in the given tool, may it be SAS, Python, or R in this case.
Yeah. So for example, the fundamentals of linear regression doesn't change whether you do it in SAS, R, Python, or RapidMiner, Orange, any tool, whichever you prefer to use. The fundamentals of regression remains the same. The mathematics, the statistics remain the same. It is just the tool which changes. So with a little bit of change, you can manage it.
Correct. And also here, Pankaj, what we can do is if you can just go drop us an email, we'll be happy to send you a brochure of our courses where you can go through the detailed curriculum, and if you have more questions, we'll be happy to answer those for you as we move along. Okay, I think we are already about 10-15 minutes ahead of time, so I think let's do one thing. What we can do is I'll take another question. I'll take another 2 questions. We have a few lined up, and then probably we'll just come towards an end. We'll take one question right now that's coming in from Harshvardhan, where he said that can we visit the local Imarticus center and speak to an expert? Sure, Harsh. Yes, we have that. We have that possibility. You can get in touch with us. You can get a feel of the place. We have centers across the country. If I may ask you, where are you located? In which city? If you could just quickly just use the same mechanism to answer. You are in Bangalore. Perfect. So we have an office there in Bangalore. So if you want, again, if you could just drop us an email right at the end of this discussion at elearning@imarticus.com. So we'll reach out to you immediately, and we'll get you in touch with somebody in the Bangalore team who can give you more details. You're welcome, Pankaj. I think that'll be extremely helpful. Thanks. Okay. We have this one other question which has come in from Asha Srinivasan, where she's asking us that she's been working with the World Bank and where she's handling the MIS vendor management as well as reporting, and now she's had a break for the last 2 years, and her question is does she still have a better scope on doing these courses or not?
Asha, if you have been managing a lot of data from a very long time, yes, it does help you to add on value to your existing portfolio. But yes, because you are starting off again in a new field, your experience might help you. But when it is a first job in analytics, you will have to lose some leverage in terms of your first pay package. Right? So for an experienced candidate, it makes sense because he can just take a lateral placement, just move in a different department. That makes more sense. Yes, but it will certainly give you value. Sarika has a question where she is asking, what job can we get after doing BSc Stats as a fresher? A BSc Stats guy typically would join a company more so often like a pharma company or something, wherein you would be working more on the data side. Specifically in, say, what I would say would be something like causal analytics. Right? So it's like less of data but more of analysis, right? And the second domain where you could see yourself specifically would be in the research domain, right? But yes, if your skill set is statistics, you can perhaps leverage that, add the computational framework, and that would give you exposure to more domains. So when we talk about something like an insurance, say for example, a guy in statistics might be seen from an actual science perspective. But the only problem is scale. With a lot of data, this becomes irrelevant, and that is why analytics is the requirement of the time wherein a person would be able to look at a lot of data and actually give pricing analytics even in insurance domain. So that's where I would say that you should add that skill set also.
Okay, on your screen right now, you should see a couple of data points that we've shared with you. We have a few centers which you can see over there at the bottom, and also our telephone number is up there. 1-800-2677-679. So if you have any questions that might crop up maybe later this evening or maybe even tomorrow morning, feel free to drop us on line and we'll be happy to get back to you. Or alternatively, you can always reach us via email at elearning@imarticus.com, and again, we'll make sure we will respond to you in the next couple of hours. I'll just quickly take another question. We have one coming in, which is from Harish, saying, can you please send us the brochure and the PDF of what you have shown in the past 1 hour? Sure, Harish. We'll just go compile this together and we'll go shoot it across to you at the end of this session. Great. So I think with this, let's end this conversation and this webinar. I would like to thank all of you for your time this evening, And we look forward to interacting with you once again. But before we end, we have one quick poll that we would like you all to fill up for us. I'm just going to go launch that right now as we speak, and if you can give us the data points, we'll be happy to reach out.